is one of my best friends. We met in England. She graduated from Chulalongkorn University. Does it sound correctly? Yeah, in Thailand. Kind of Seoul University, like in Thailand. So it's the best university. And then she studied linguistics or English at linguistics at Chulalongkorn University. And after that, she went to Cambridge University to study linguistics as well, right? And then she went to Leeds University for PhD. That's where we met. And her supervisor was Martin Bargate, and he is an expert in spoken discourse, right? Yes. And then after she finished her PhD, she worked at Maidon University, and now she joined the Open University in Bangkok 2016. And she's going to talk about pragmatics, and it's her actually area. Her PhD is about pragmatics, so it will be very interesting to listen to her presentation, because we all know pragmatics, but we think it's only probably for advanced learners. And then she will talk about how it is possible for young learners. Thank you very much. Let's welcome her with big hand. Yeah.
Thank you, and good afternoon again, and thank you for coming to my session and the introduction, friendly introduction to Suyeon. You probably have heard from her by my training. I'm not a primary educator, but it all began with my passion in teaching English for young children. Back then I was a student and I was working as a playgroup coordinator for an international school. As an assistant, you're not allowed to deal with development of materials. You're just there taking care of the kids. But when you spend time with kids, from toddlers to primary students, especially those who studied English as an additional language, just when their parents, expats, then moved to Thailand or relocated to Thailand, and they just struggle along with English. Just by spending time with these little creatures, with the children, you began to know how well they could learn from one another on the playground. And that's where I began my interest in spoken language. Years of training in linguistics help in being systematic about this and that, but still my passion in spoken language has never faded. Working with Professor Weigand, as Suyeon mentioned, and helped me a bit on task-based and looking at pragmatics. And then when I work at university, I work with adult learners or young adults. But in my spare time, I have to go back and then help one of my friends at the, we call it Office of Basic Education in Thailand. It has been established for about 20 years. It's at the same time as English then is introduced to primary education in Korea. Okay, we have the same history, I believe, in Thailand and in South Korea, where English then was taught as an additional language, not until the children reached about 9 or 10 years old. With the belief that with certain maturity, with strong background in mother tongue, learning another language wouldn't be that daunting. So the Office of Basic Education has an Institute of English, and right now we're trying to add more exposure in primary education, especially in schools that have subject teachers. So unlike Korea, Thailand's education system doesn't have homeroom teachers. So every subject are taught by subject teachers. Yeah. So in English, then those with a degree in English are not interested in working in primary education, and they look for other jobs that probably allow them to live as they want. Okay, being teachers, we know that it's a hard work. And being a homeroom teacher requires you to be well-rounded, and you have to draw on so many things. I really admire this. Okay. My talk today wouldn't be so theoretical. It's based on years of research I have accumulated, and I would just give some kind of practical, but yes, I would it would be nice if we could end this with a question and answer, with some sharing and possibilities. I don't know, but it would be nice to hear from you as well. Okay, I'm not just saying that what I'll be talking about would be practical or accessible in all contexts, but it's an idea we can learn from one another. So what I'll be talking about what pragmatics is and why it matters in communication, and then I'll move on to pragmatic aspects of learners from a developmental perspective. Then we will argue for why then pragmatic then should be taught, and we study cases from adults, and how can this then be an argument for teaching pragmatics in young learners. While people would say that children may not understand the complexities of adults' interaction or international tests and do not require children then to achieve a certain level of comprehension of indirectness. We will see why such argument can be made supporting teaching pragmatics to young learners in some classroom activities. Okay. So all in all, then I hope that we all here can address the question of how we enrich, we gain a better understanding of language use and how we can give tools for our learners to draw on their own. I believe that one of these boxes could remind you of the everyday interaction you have. People then tend to do things with words, or in fact that much of what we say, much of what we do to one another just go beyond literal meaning, or the fact that we don't take literal meaning seriously, and much then is left understood but not said. Okay? Or by growing up, we seem to be kind of fluent in seeing, analyzing relationships between speakers and hearers. And when we adults then are placed in another context, or when we are located, we tend to think or care a lot about whether you would sound polite in that language, or would it be rude to do this, would it be rude to do that, or what would be the culturally appropriate way to do something. So I think one of these boxes then could perhaps give you some idea of what pragmatics is. Okay. While all of us could perhaps sense it, but when it comes to teaching and learning it, it could be hard to just get a good grasp of it. Okay, and we'll see why. Professor Shen also mentioned David Crystal, okay, and I'm going to mention him again. In defining what pragmatic is, scholars have tried so hard, but most of the definitions are quite theoretical and tend to compare it with semantics or other branches of linguistics. Professor Crystal is quite different. What he proposed here is a sketch that kind of frame what language learning and language teaching then could benefit from. So he kind of get a good grasp of it by just one or two sentences. Yes, pragmatic is study of language, but from the point of view of users. But by this we mean both hearers and speakers. Okay, in traditional theoretical pragmatics, it is defined as speaker's meaning and hearer's interpretation. But Professor Crystal kind of looked at it from an overall perspective, coining it as language user's viewpoint. So it includes both speakers, hearer, not necessarily in spoken communication, but in writing as well. In all modes of discourse, even in online communication, where you don't really see practically speaker or hearer. Okay. The choices and the constraints that they encounter in using language in social interactions. So these highlighted things kind of frame agendas of research in pragmatics and ELT. Okay, or even in cross-cultural communication or cultural training program for teachers, for language teachers in particular. there are kind of several topics and areas of investigations, but with a time constraint, I wouldn't be able to cover everything. And besides, this is not their whole linguistics part. I would just look at what then we as primary educators can work on, and what's common in textbooks and national curricula. Okay. The three are speech acts that come from speech act theories, which have speech act theory and the notion of speech acts and indirect speech acts that have great influence on functional notional syllabus back in the 80s. And research in politeness as well that somehow inspire, influence materials developers to put a box on cultural tips, what's appropriate or what's not, okay, including teacher training, in-service, pre-service training, especially in Southeast Asian contexts. And conversation analysis, we'll see more about that. And cross-cultural pragmatics, as I have said, sometimes it is kind of cloaked under intercultural competence or intercultural ability that graduates or even high school students these days are expected to achieve as part of their becoming global citizens. It's necessary to first distinguish the three layers of meaning to understand what speech act is and what it's all about. The three layers of meaning that you probably find it in full paper in the proceedings, and the main references, the classic ones, but for the sake of clarity and conciseness here, I would just emphasize on the example. Okay. This one is taken in a school context. A teacher, she's from Nigeria, said danger to a group of primary students who is walking towards a construction site, and it's kind of not very well maintained because there's no roads or canvas to tell the students that this is a construction site and it's danger, don't go in. So when the teacher said danger, the students stopped. There are two second graders. Yeah. So what is going on here? Linguistically, danger, inau. Yeah. But what is meant is that don't come close, don't come near. I'm telling you it's dangerous to come near. But these are not said. But the effect on the student, a 7 and 8-year-old, they stopped. They knew that this is kind of a request not to come near, or even an order to stay away from the construction site that is not properly maintained. Okay. So the students then could basically understand what is not said. Okay. A colleague of mine who saw the PowerPoint would say, it could be that those second graders understood the word danger. Okay, it's like, yeah, probably. So they know the extension, the pragmatic extension of danger. Yeah. So that's how what happened in less than 5 seconds revealed a lot about speakers' meaning, hearers, in this case, children, interpretation. Okay. But much of what we say or do then go beyond literal meaning. In this case, though, there's another case is on a series of questions, elaborate questions that may not appear in primary textbooks, but I'm just giving them here to explain further. Close the door can be found in primary textbook. Okay, pick up your pencil, open the book, follow me. Okay, is it? But there seems to be a gap between close the door and would you mind closing the door in high school or in university education. And clause is like, is it okay if you could, or I must have asked you 100 times to keep that doors closed. So what's in between? Okay. Primary students were able to understand close the door and they could probably say it, likely to be able to say it. But would you like closing the door and all these things that may appear in other types of media or even in university textbook are waiting for them over there. But what's in between, one may ask. Okay? Things like, would you mind closing the door, and is it okay if you close the door, or even bugs can come in alone. Yeah, bugs can come in, and the hearer may just feel the responsibility to close the door. Okay, this mismatch between forms and functions, like would you mind closing the door, it's a question, but it's indirect, taken as an indirect request. The thesis is taken, okay, could be one of the reasons why politeness, it's kind of important phenomenon. It's universal. I'm sure that Korean would have phrases that indicate the speaker's intention not to inflict on the hearers, or markers that indicate gender and hierarchical relationships or social status. I'm sure that Asian languages are rich in those particles that tell us who we are and the relationship between us and the hearer. But in English, okay, it is kind of grammatically complex. It doesn't come as in particles or things that can be taught at the beginning or at the end. It can involve a lot of moves, a lot of attempts and modifications. And you probably see that there's a huge gap for a primary student to grow, to grasp, and just to make sense about this world when they use English as a lingua franca. Then the second topic of investigation I'd like to introduce is conversation analysis. Even though it says conversation, CA or conversation analysis then is not rooted in linguistics. It has a deep ground in sociology back in the 70s. So sociologists then hypothesized or wanted to prove that want to understand how interactions then, everyday interactions then can be made, and how us interactants make sense of the world that we live in, and how speakers or interactants achieve their goals by saying just that. CA then has a detailed description conventions, right? I wouldn't really venture into this, but you will see some of the examples. You see that it's not really a transcription of what is said. It requires certain ears or eyes for that as well. The focal points on turn taking, or how participants then take turns in the talk, especially in with two people or in some kind of bigger projects, involves the whole dining table, like how families interact. Okay, for the past 10 years, shift has been made to medical communication, right, and as well as how conversation analysis can be used in the classroom, especially with young learners, to explore how they learn. Okay, it has been a tool that has been employed in not just sociology, but also in second language acquisition and in those who work under sociocultural theory. Okay. This one is an extract from my own data at a playgroup last year in December. I initially planned to use the other transcription, but this playgroup then was so fascinating because usually the one who led the playgroup is a native speaker of English, but this time it's teacher Sam. Sam actually is an engineer. He's an English-speaking German, a father of 3, but we share the same passion of putting our children then to play together. So my son is also in the playgroup. We tried videotaping earlier in 2017, but the kids are so, the millennials, they love technology so much that they don't bother to play. They just wanted to come in front of the camera and make sure that they're well recorded. Okay? So it's too just distracted for the kids. So we just placed audio recorder with Sam in this case. Parents of the kids have gave us consent to record their play. Okay, the session before that was an ukulele. Okay, Sam's trying to play guitar, but one of the kids, Elijah, whose parents from India, then wanted to do ukulele, and he tried to show it off. So enough of the play, and then Sam said, "Kids, wash your hand." So on your left hand, these are line numbers, and then the speakers, and the transcription. You would see some kind of funny marks, okay, and lines 2 and 3, the equal marks. This means that their turns are so close together. It looks like there's no pause at all. All right, so there's a lot to unpack here. With the instruction, kids, wash your hands, and Elijah said, my hands are clean, and then I wanted to join in this little rejection, okay, that my hands too, and then what Sam did was to reiterate or modify his instruction, right, by giving reasons, okay? So this is how it works. Kids are washing their hands. And then book out turn number 5. And just wanted to show her teachers that hands are clean, all right, the parents' hands are clean. And then Jade and Sam also say together at the same time. These are overlapping. So it shows the dynamics of kids' talk and things that involve around hand washing. Okay. And then Sam moves on with, now let's have the carrot cakes and the papaya. Turns 8 and 10, all right, involves another session of rejection without saying no. Yeah, without saying no. Okay. Sam then elaborated his persuasions. It's healthy, nutrition, but it looks like Pam on line 11 didn't seem to pick up everything. She repeated, enough to eat. And Sam spotted on that quickly and corrected it, enough to eat. And look what happened in turn 13, enough to eat, and she kind of repeated it. Okay, so how is it related to pragmatics? So it shows that kids understand how turn taking is made, even though there's sometimes a bit overlap, but it's out of intention to show, to impress that, you know, I was a good boy, I was a good girl, okay? And we could see the moments of learning, small moments of learning that took place. Adults who are not trained pedagogically kind of spot on, and then we kind of recast and do kind of correction to that. Sometimes acts, you know, like order, rejection, or order, acceptance do not fall neatly turn by turn. You know. There can be some insertion sequences, and conversation analysis can reveal these. And this is kind of thing that are so unlike the language presented in textbook. In textbook, you see that acts then go neatly line by line. Insertion sequences like this do not appear. Okay, this is kind of messiness. Okay, I understand it might be too difficult for young learners, but it happens in everyday interaction. At an international market, at a university where I used to work, we have this international day, and then international staff and students are encouraged to do some selling things that represent their countries. They get help from embassies to distribute these things. The request, you know, or the invitation for the students to buy come in the first line, but the acceptance didn't come until the very last. So what happened in between? There can be some bargaining or just question to ask for clarification, or perhaps I wouldn't take all of these but just one. Okay, the students just simple, minimal vocalization. It's quickly spotted on, and the vendor was so eager to close the deal, and he offered a discount, so deal's closed too. So conversation does not really come in full phrases or in full sentences. Things like these, you know, are so natural, and I'm sure that you would all agree that it's part of growing up. Children are now aware of signs like this in conversation, and we teachers can exploit what they know. Yeah, in the intricacy of conversation. So altogether, what we have seen so far kind of shows us that pragmatics is crucial to communication. In language assessment, it's part of the language competence. In 21st century competences, it's recognized as part of international competence. So it's kind of everywhere, not just in linguistics part or intercultural part, but it's part of the person's, competence, communicative competence. And pragmatics itself then interacts with grammar and discourse. There is kind of a debate going on whether pragmatics then needs grammar for L2 or foreign language learners. Okay, but I think that the debate perhaps is too big for this forum. Okay, but I take the view that pragmatics and grammar and discourse go together. Okay, I take the view that they cannot be separated. So it comes to the main questions of needs it be taught and why we have to teach it. Yeah, we can learn a lot from second language adult learners. Okay, that even highly proficient learners still experience some pragmatic failures. I'm not saying that this failure it's really bad or not. It's what the literature says. But if we look at the status of English as lingua franca, sometimes it can be acceptable, or people tend to forgive us because we're not native speakers of English. Okay. The literature say pragmatic failures, but that's 30 years ago, and there's a movement in pragmatics as well. It's called emancipation, setting ourselves free. We're not living under the pragmatics of the target language culture. All right, so this is just to share that this view or the kind of failure in it may not be that really bad. Okay. Apart from the fact that high proficiency levels do not guarantee pragmatic understanding or production, all right, we would see that grammatical aspects or tense or models, as in I was thinking of or I was wondering of, it's not really the past or does not carry the past meaning. It carries some kind of more flexibility or less commitment. These pragmatic meanings of models then are kind of harder to acquire. But if we don't really foster some of these in between, then the chance may never come. Or by the time that learners then write their paper for argument or deal with people in international context, when they kind of wanted to downtone their assertion or becoming tactful or engaging soft skills and coaching people, like Professor Shin said, then this thing can be a little bit blunt. And why teaching pragmatics to young learners is probably the main question we're going to talk about then. And as I said, that there's an office in Thailand that oversees basic education or primary education, but our performance then has been very low. Okay, we're a nation that prides ourselves on many tests. So one of the projects that I involved with my MA student is we analyze tests, national tests of grade 3 and 6, and we would like to see how pragmatics and discourse are treated there. Okay, we have only 7 or 10 items out of 100, and worse than that is that these are mainly for memorization and lexical knowledge. There's a blank card with a cake on, and the test asks the students to fill in the word for it. It says happy birthday. So that's memorization of happy birthday in association with that picture. But it has nothing to do with context, which is the cornerstone of pragmatics. All right. And analysis of primary EFL textbooks also shows that there's a huge gap between what is on the test, what is on the textbook, and what's on real life by conversation analysis data. Okay. So what I'm going to propose right here and share in the Q&A session is that in SLA research, and there is one working hypothesis on noticing. For us, I think primary educators or teacher trainers and would need to kind of design a lot of activities for students. Okay, and you get the advantage of being with the kids then for the whole year. You can see the development. You can pride yourself on, I as a teacher know my student and have the advantage of getting trust from them. So you can see what the whole year then has to offer, and you can perhaps build research skills along with the students. Students and teachers and work together with authentic data, for example, complements then one speech app. Right? It does not have to be ambitious for the whole pragmatically oriented curriculum. It can be just one speech app that can go beyond good and congratulations, like this. I'm going to show you a small extract from MasterChef Junior. Okay, Gordon Ramsay can be nice as well. This is a project that children and you can do together. You might prefer the adults version. So, in this episode, then the children were assigned to get a mysterious box. Inside the box, there were kind of ugly things like kidneys, livers, snails. This is a twist of creativity of a 10-year-old, 8-year-old, how they managed to do that. And Troy were able to.
The first dish, this was smart, in a very creative way. This individual is a top contender. Second time in the top 3, please step forward. But they taste delicious.
Thank you.
Mind blowing.
Troy's just always up there. He's been in the top 3 like 1,000 times.
Right, describe the dish, please.
Well, you have a snail chowder with herb oil and baked eggplant peels.
Visually, it looks delicious. It's rich, it's creamy. Love those eggplant chips. But the snails aren't overcooked. Sometimes when they go inside a chowder, they get rubbery and a little bit chewy, but they taste delicious.
Thank you.
Mind blowing. Great job.
Thank you very much.
Seriously.
There's only 42 seconds.
42 seconds, a lot and going on. There are several compliments that Ramsay made. And then visually it looks delicious, and then 7 minutes pass because you were eating, and then there's a kind of criticism, and then he wraps up, but they taste delicious. Thank you, my vote, great job, well done. Yeah, even simple things like this, it doesn't have to be long, can be integrated into classroom to get a taste of what first the authentic language used and what goes beyond the classroom textbook, right? So due to constraint of time, then it deals with motivation and relevance as well. So older kids like preteens and who are becoming more independent and feel that they wanted to do things on their own, this can be a mission for them, okay, to work on, it could be just something else, other types of medias, or how Korean famous series have been translated to English. Can this part be translated? Are these okay to be translated? Does this concept exist in English as well? It can be designed into a task that requires both, research and technology, presentation, and then data bank. Yeah, they can exploit to use the subtitle feature, to save time and then just to make sure that this is accessible for 10 to 11-year-olds. Yeah, and you can do it in a project and you can share in one of those tools, and then you design on your own, you know your students best. But all these things then would help teachers and students then work together as classroom researchers. It perhaps correspond to Dr. Pinker this morning, small r. Yeah, with this kind of small inquiry, it doesn't have to be long. The things that they like, the things that they're interested in. But by the time they get into secondary school, I'm sure this can be a grounding for oral fluency. And then in high school, and you never know what the little ones, be careful, could become. All right, so that's the end of my talk. And I hope that you have any questions.
Send you the full slide if you like.
Yes, any comments? Dr. Pinker, because I think it's related to what you talked about, right?
Thank you very much. It was really very interesting. So I don't really have a question, but since now that is my microphone, I wanted to just ask you, so the transcription of that chef show, so did you do that yourself? How long does it take to do 40 seconds?